Every year, over 650 million women are forced into child marriage against their will. In fact, by the end of this video, over 120 other girls will be forced into child marriage, often towards men who are over 3 to 4 times their age. We, as citizens of a global society, should work together to end child marriage across the world. Today, I will identify the problems addressed within my current system in my ill. I will identify those responsible for this issue in my blame. I will suggest a potential course of action in my cure, and I will weigh the costs against the benefits for implementing this new system. As a sociology major who has done specific research and studies gender and society, as well as globalization, I believe that I have a pretty good comprehensive understanding of this. Now that I have outlined my argument, let's move on to the issues in our ill. So girls across the world are being forced into child marriage against their will. So this is different than just a normal arranged childhood marriage. This is girls who are forced into child marriage. Their consent is broken and they are not able to consent to get a divorce. This is leaving women disadvantaged. This is causing several educational and healthcare disparities, and it's furthering the risk of spousal abuse and rape through intimate partner violence. Um, World Health Organization's publication, Preventing Early Pregnancy and Poor Reproductive Outcomes Among Adolescents in Developing Countries, states that 90% of the women who experience adolescent pregnancy are already in a forced marriage or union with their spousal abusers. This problem is creating a system that hinders female empowerment, and it forces women into a cycle of poverty, leaving them dependent on their abusive partners, and it furthers the objectification of women as a system. Now that I've talked about my ill, let's move on to my next point, which is my blame. So this blame goes beyond just the microsocial. This is a macro view issue, so it affects society at large. And I think the ones that are most responsible for this is the legislators and leaders of the world that continue to allow the practice of chattel bride selling, so selling women as a property and selling girls as a property in the form of chattel, or also the people that are responsible for dowries, so giving the groom's bride or the bride's groom's family money for accepting the bride. Both of these are predicated on child marriage because those that are younger are oftentimes sold at a lower price or they get a higher chattel bride selling. So they are the ones responsible. Now that I've discussed where we should place our blame, let's move on to my next point, which is the cure for the issue. So I have implemented a two-step cure. The first would be not allowing child marriage anymore, so banning all legislation on marriage before the age of 18. The next would be globally empowering women through education and reproductive strategies. So the International Center for Research on Women has found that in their education brief on economic impacts of childhood marriage, that girls in 15 different countries surveyed were were less likely to be put into child marriage if they completed secondary school. So education is seen as a correlation with lower likelihood of ending as a child bride. So now that we've talked about some of the cures, let's talk about the cost to benefit for implementing this strategy. So we have to weigh the potential cost of intervening in global affairs during our own economic recession. Global female empowerment movements have estimated a potential cost. An NGO or non-governmental organization, Convoy of Hope, has stated that $1,000 per person for educational and job training will reduce the risk of child marriage over the course of 10 years for Ethiopian women. So if we follow that model and we look at it for how it applies to other people as well in other countries, we can find that just $1,000 per person will greatly reduce the risk of becoming a child bride. Now that we've talked about the cost a little bit, let's go ahead and talk about the benefit. So first, the Berkeley Economic Review has stated that ending child marriage will generate $566 billion globally by 2030. Additionally, the International Women's Health Coalition states that ending child marriage will reduce mortality associated with early pregnancy and the transmission of HIV/AIDS. Lastly, ending child marriage will also reduce intimate partner violence and rape faced among women. In her article, Child Marriage and Intimate Partner Violence, a comparative study of 34 countries, Rachel Kidman found that girls who were married before their 18th birthday were more likely to face intimate partner violence and rape. So therefore, ending this practice will reduce the likelihood of women facing these problems. In conclusion, based on the points above made, I believe that we should abolish child marriage globally. In my ill, I identified the exploitation that millions of girls undergo by being forced into child marriage. In the blame, I suggested a systematic blame on legislators who allow this process, both nationally and abroad. In the cure, I proposed common sense legislation to end child marriage. I identified the possible reactions to intervention and the overwhelming benefits to stopping this. Every year, millions of girls are forced into child marriage against their will. From the moment they are married, their opportunities for education are severely limited or often gone. As members of a global society, we should make sure that we are looking after all of our members. Empowering women through reproductive and health justice and educating them will benefit the entire world. Thank you.